Hey everyone, Alan and Bree here. We are the Hunter and the Hippie, and we're excited to release this new episode.
Man, oh man, do we get sidetracked at the beginning and we talk about spin bikes and the smells that you might or might not notice from those seats. Um, but that's not the meat and potatoes of it. We really today dive into 14ers and mountains because Alan has an incredible goal of going after all the 14ers in Colorado this year, all in 1 year. You heard it right. So we kind of share our own experiences with 14ers and tune in and let us know what you've climbed, what your experience with it is, or if you haven't, we'd love to hear it.
And always a huge thank you to Brianna Cote, who is in charge of all of our photography and still images, Allison Band, ALLYSON, for our intro and outro music, and most important, the people that listen, you. Thank you so much for tuning in, sharing feedback, sending us messages. We love hearing it. For real, we do. Send us messages, send us emails. We love knowing that we're making an impact out there. So thank you for those of you that have. Please also subscribe on whatever channel you're listening to this on, as well as give us a 5-star rating, preferably, and leave a review, because all of that helps us. It pushes us to the top. And of course, we're trying to be like Joe Rogan, but better, duh. So we need all the comments, reviews that we can get. And enjoy this week's episode.
What's up?
What's up?
Way past coffee time.
Way past. Well, no, now it's, you know, what's really funny is I've been running around all morning. I mentioned, right, like I'm a little tired.
Mm-hmm.
And so Friday morning, it's Friday. Right now we're recording on a Friday. And I teach a 6:15 yoga class. And then after yoga, I went to the lifting gym and worked out. And then I had to get this beautiful beard of mine trimmed. And then I went to spin class. I've been going to spin class. And so I went to spin class. And then I came home and my coffee cup was basically empty from all the happenings of the day. And I was like, damn it. And I was running late. And I'm like, shit, I need to make more coffee. And I went over to where I make coffee in my kitchen, and there was still some in the French press from this morning, and I was like, jackpot! It's just the little things. I was like, fuck yeah! Poured it into my mug, went and heated it up. I was like, hell yeah! I was like, life is good. It's the little things that you got to be grateful for.
You are mentioning spin class, and you're not going to do this now, but at some point you should do this, and then maybe you should find someone to create this invention I was going to make at one point in time. Mm-hmm. And
okay,
so
what's this invention that we're giving away to the world now?
Yes, and then whoever, whatever, I'm just letting someone else be a millionaire off my idea.
Hashtag TM. Hashtag TM. You gotta. We get 10% royalties automatically.
But as some people might know or not know, I worked for SoulCycle for quite some time as they were scaling and building up, and so I spent many hours on a spin bike, or as we referred to it, an indoor cycling bike. It was an indoor cycling class, not a spin class. So that was very important to differentiate. However, do you know how many people's hoo-has sit on those seats?
There's literally, a lot. I don't know the answer. But is there an answer?
And the thing is, yes, we had a very, a cleaning process. So, after each class, we go, with this antibacterial and we wipe it down. And, so you're like, oh, okay, yeah, wipe it down. But it's porous. Those seats tend to be porous. Mm-hmm. And so they soak everything in from your hoo-has, whatever hoo-ha you have. You're sweaty. Who?
Okay, so we
And
have to
so
clean
there
our
are
own
times.
machines.
Okay.
And like, so like, you know how people clean, like they're like,
But
and that's it. Like,
and people would wipe, because there's also like you could grab your own wipes and wipe it down before too.
Yeah.
Like we did the
Yeah.
clean, but like there were wipes that people could take. It doesn't matter if you're wiping the surface. What's soaked into
hmm
the material is
Yeah.
in there. Like
Yeah.
that wipe down is not doing. And like people got, and so one,
people aren't clean. Let's just say people aren't
sometimes
clean.
you're setting up your bike. Like I remember there'd be times I'd be setting up my bike and I'd get a whiff of the seat and I'm like,
Oh.
And then there at SoulCycle they had the option for like the extra padded seats. Like you could just, it was free to just like use one of those and put it on, and it was like a gel seat.
Extra
And those,
padding means more porous.
no, but those always were used once and then they were thrown. We always put them in the wash, right? So they go through. But I was like, I didn't like it was, I mean, they're like an inch and a half tall. Like it just was uncomfortable. And so when I was working there at one point, I was like, what they need to do is sell your own personal seat covers that have like a waterproof layer on the inside that goes around it, and then just a like lycra layer on the outside that you cinch tight, that you personally use, take home, and then you can just throw it in the wash.
In the washing machine.
Mm-hmm. And
so
then
you're not going to like my idea.
What?
Because mine's like wasteful, but like I go to, motorcycle racers have right, so they wear a helmet, of course, and they have the plastic screens over their faces, their eyes.
Yeah.
But for like rainy conditions, right? Like you don't have windshield wipers, and like and the track spits up a lot of like oil. Like when it rains, it's not just water, right? You're getting rubber from other bikes' tires, and you're getting oil from the road. So they have a plastic system. It's like right, so it's wasteful. Again, it's plastic. I don't know. Maybe they've become more bio friendly with it. But essentially, what happens when you're racing, right? Like you reach up and there's these tabs, and it's just like and you can just rip it off, and I have a clear screen again for a little bit, and but it's multiple layers, so you can do it, and you can just keep doing it, and then like if you run out, right? Like when you pit, they slap more on. And then again, you start running and you're just pulling them off as you go. So initially, like I thought of just like that over the seat, right? Like you sit down, you bike, you get up, and right, you pull your layer off, and now there's a fresh, clean seat. But the cover is good too, right? Like a little cinch. It has like the little toggle thing.
Yeah,
I already see it. Right, it has a little toggle, and you're just like whoop, and it like locks in place.
I bet it would be like low. I mean, this is from, I think I thought about this probably 10 years ago.
You worked at SoulCycle when? Like 10 plus years ago, right?
10 years. Yeah. I think it was 2011. Wow. What year? 2011 or 2012. I think 2011 to 2015.
Okay. Yeah,
somewhere in that
so the
period.
start of your career there was well over 10 years ago. 12 years ago.
Yeah. I was really like amped up
like,
on
it's
it.
still the seat. It's still just the seat.
It's disgusting.
And I thought when I was wiping my bike down this afternoon, I was thinking, because like I've been going to the 6 a.m. classes.
Yeah.
So a few things when it's cold here currently, or it's been chilly at night.
Yeah.
So like they don't heat the room overnight. So the room's a little chilly, right? Like people are just starting to get going. So I really haven't been like breaking a sweat. I just went to a noon class today. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Right? Like it wasn't much harder, but it was way fucking hotter.
Yeah.
And like my pants were actually like drenched.
Yeah.
Shirt. And like I'm not a big sweater. And I was like, and I like, as I'm wiping the seat down, my own seat, I was like, man, this seat's nasty. And
Yeah.
so it's funny
And
that you're
even if
bringing
you're
this
not
up.
a sweater, even if it's at 6 a.m., like those creases.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You don't know about people's
Yeah.
creases.
You know,
I'm telling you, I honestly like, and this is how it came out, because there'd be times where I'd be like washing my spin clothes, like my leggings. I'm like, ugh, this is not my smell. This is not me. This is not me in the crotch. This is not my crotch. This is someone else's crotch.
How
or
do
balls.
you know that though?
Because I know the smell of all my clothes. I sweat in my running clothes. And women have a much more sensitive nose to men. We have like,
I'm sure.
I have like a very highly sensitive sense of smell, but I think it's actually like a very common like female thing to have this like heightened sense of smell. So it's like, oh, that's funny. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I don't do that anymore, but I am willing to hand this amazing idea, and I'll be straight up, like, especially for women, because our parts are more internal. Yes. Like yeast infections, like all that stuff from like bacteria, like
even UTIs. Men hardly get UTIs, right? Like,
and it's like that you're sitting on like a infestation. So but I'm so I like, that was one of my like, this is genius. This I could make them, and it would be pretty easy, I think, to make it. I sat a lot with like, what would the material be? Like what? And I was like, maybe I should do a prototype, but you know, it was just yeah. You had
the looming anxiety of a corporate job.
Yeah.
Which we talked about in last week.
I know.
Like, if you didn't have that looming anxiety to do all the other things a COO does, right? Like, then it's like, oh, but then you figure out like, oh, is that really what I want to do? And you're like, fuck that.
That's what it was.
That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Right. That's
I'm not passionate
It's not just the looming anxiety.
Yeah.
Seat covers.
Yeah. I'm not, it's like, it would be so, I think it would be really successful, but it's not my passion.
Right.
So if it is someone's passion, and maybe I have to just like relook at it as like cleanly crotches. I don't know.
That's the name of the company.
Yeah, there you go. You can pay me for that idea too.
#TM. That's funny. So you brought up smell, right? Like, and like knowing, like, so I'm like, I have a sensitive nose too. I mean, look at this thing. This thing's huge. This thing takes in all the smells. Okay. I'm Jewish and Italian, right? And like my nose has just gotten bigger as I age. What do they say? Your nose doesn't stop. Your nose is the only thing that doesn't stop growing. Your nose and
ears. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Like, and if you look at my pictures of my father, like his nose took up, like before he died, like his nose took up most of his face. His ears were massive. Look like fucking Dumbo and shit. So anyway. But yeah, so like I'm really sensitive to smell. And like I do find, like, even if it's like a really like bad like BO, like it sucks, like if I have to deal with it, but it's like not great, whatever. But patchouli, let's talk about patchouli.
You're in the wrong business with yoga.
I am. Fuck. Patchouli is the worst fucking smell on this planet. And not only am I in the wrong business, I'm in the wrong city. I live in Boulder. Right? You can't walk 10 steps without smelling patchouli somewhere. And oh my god, I can't. Literally, like you can have like a blended essential oil, and if it has patchouli in it, my nose picks it out. I can smell patchouli a fucking mile away. It is awful.
Yeah.
There's this guy at the gym, and he has patchouli on, and like it is so, and like one of the biggest problems with patchouli is like some essential oils, or most essential oils, aren't really overpowering.
Yeah.
But patchouli is. Right? So like a little bit of patchouli goes a really long way, and people don't understand that, and they use a lot of bit of patchouli and it goes really fucking far. And like I seriously, like I've run into this guy now like twice and like working out in the same area as him, and I'm just like literally like lifting and like like I want to just throw up, and I am half tempted to be like, bro, enough, like stop, you reek. Like, you think you smell good, but you fucking stink. And I haven't said anything yet because I don't know if it's the right thing to say, but I fucking can't stand it. I seriously, like, I saw him the other day, and this was yesterday. I saw him the other day, and I was like, don't go over there. And I'm like looking at like what's next on my workout sheet, like hoping the machine that I needed to use was not by him. And I was like,
you tell your strength coach, I couldn't do that yesterday. I had to change plans. Why? Were you injured or tired? No, patchouli.
Yeah, there's a guy wearing patchouli over there. Couldn't do it.
He was and what too sucks close is like to the weights.
It like lingers. It lingers. Like he was gone, and I was like, oh, and I'm like looking. I'm like, where the hell is he? And he was like across the gym, and I'm like, motherfucker. Like it is still like it's like your seat thing, right? Like it's just embedded into the workout equipment now. And I'm just like, oh,
you gotta go to a new gym.
Awful.
That's the only answer.
Why do you want to cancel this membership? Because there's one person in this entire gym that wears patchouli. He ruined it for me.
All the weights smell like patchouli. Oh my gosh.
It's so terrible.
We had one of my friends in one of my old run crews. Mm-hmm. After run crew, someone like left a sweater behind or something like that. Mm-hmm. And we were like, whose is it? And I smelt it and I was like, oh, it smells like patchouli. And we're like, oh, it's so-and-so's. Because she always smells like patchouli. Yeah, we're like, oh, that's, But I actually, one of my favorite candles was a patchouli tobacco. But I don't feel like the patchouli was like a strong scent in it.
To you.
Yeah. I don't know.
To you.
Yeah, maybe
but
I should.
But again, right, like, if it was a candle, then it's likely that, right, like, the manufacturers understand the strength of patchouli.
Yeah.
So maybe it wasn't, but, like, patchouli, like I said, a little patchouli goes a really long way.
Actually, there was something, once I was with my mom, and there was the scent of patchouli, we were, like, trying to figure it out, and she's like, it's that stuff that like the hippies used to, like I think it was like, I can't remember what she said. It's like that. And then she's like, oh, it's patchouli. The incense, that incense.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah.
For me, it was I was in the Army, and there was this girl who lived in our barracks. And you always knew when she was like up, so like she lived downstairs on the second floor, we lived on the third floor.
Yeah.
And she was friends with our neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
And you always knew when she was visiting our neighbors because you could just smell her.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't even have to know she was there. Like you're like, oh, patchouli, so and so's there.
Yeah.
So. Well,
noted. I don't have a problem with patchouli, but it's not my scent. I'm all natural. I don't have a scent. I have my own probably hormonal scent that changes throughout the 28 days.
Every 28 days.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, it is wild to like remove, like, I don't know the last time I've used deodorant. Like I'm used pretty, just very natural. And you start to pick up on for women, because we cycle hormonally over 28 days versus regulating or cycling 24 hours like men do. I notice, I'll be like, I remember smelling it. I'm like, what? When I first started to catch it, I'm like, what is that smell? That's different of mine, different. And it's just throughout the month, different periods, like you can catch your scent of, based on what hormones are changing in the body. And which is kind of cool to just be connected. You gotta think
your hormones.
Just see that, right? Like just to know the naturalness of that in yourself. And not to the point of like, oh, I'm out of regulation or whatever, but
this is all true because your hormones, right? Like this isn't true in the sense, right, like of where we're at in our world now, but like your hormones need to adjust and put off a scent to attract a male, right? Like, because it's like if you're ovulating, it's like, oh, like I'm fertile, right? Like, smell me, like you're trying to essentially, like, yeah, right, like you're essentially like, oh, like, hey, yeah, like, hey, like you want someone to come over, and right, so like, yeah, that's absolutely true.
And it's
Men just
fascinating.
don't want to smell.
They actually said there's like, I don't know if this is, I think it might be research backed, but I remember reading this. There was a period where I read multiple things around how actually birth control has impacted women's ability to choose like appropriate partners or the right partners for them, like life partners, because of the way that it changes. Yeah, something interesting of it. Some of these, again, like, I'm sure it's not just birth control, but other like synthetic aspects of our life have now like really made it challenging to decipher like who is a good partner. And there was, I think I read something where like people went off birth control and then like their relationships like fell apart because there was I
believe it. Like, all of a sudden you don't like the smell of them, but like that's not what you're picking up on, right? Like, it just triggered something in your brain or something. That's
you're
wild.
picking up like chemical, like just something
I'd
greater
love
than
love to see more research on that. That'd be freaking interesting.
Yeah, I mean, but think about any other synthetics, like synthetic light, right? We are, how that's affected our circadian rhythms, and why they're really pushing now too to like go low light, eliminate certain lights in the evenings, so that your body starts to get used to, this is when I go to sleep, like get that sunlight in the eyes as early as you can to trigger that, because we have, like back then they didn't have light all the time and like bright lights all the time. So yeah,
and they rose with the sun, and they went to bed when the sun went down. Like, they didn't. It's not like they're like, oh, turn on the light switch and.
And all I mean, our eyes are directly like connected and are a part of our brain, so those receptors are major signals.
And your eyes literally, visibly adjust. Like, when it is dark, your pupils dilate. Like, you can literally see the changes in your eyes when light changes.
Yeah.
And shit, and you feel it too when it's really dark and you flip on a light and you're like, right? Like, that's your body telling you something.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating. It's yeah. Wait, speaking of light and lack of a headlamp, I feel like I read something about that on your first 14er journey adventure.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell me all about it.
It was definitely an adventure. So for those of you that don't know, have we talked about this yet on the show? I don't think we have.
I don't know if you've mentioned it or not.
So every year I theme my year, and then I also choose like a task most years to like do something. And so this year it is to climb. There's 58 mountains 58 peaks in Colorado that are above 14,000 feet, and most average, right, like people, actually most average people don't ever even climb one of them. But like, if you're living in Colorado, like the people who decide to climb all of them, it takes years, or they take years to climb. There are definitely the exceptions where, like, I think the speed record is 9 days, which is insanity to climb 58 mountains over 14,000 feet. The guy, Chris Fish, I think his name is. Do you know him?
Mm-mm.
He's a Colorado guy. I wouldn't be surprised if you knew him. I think his name's Chris Fish. I could be wrong. But he just set the speed record for winter ascents in one winter season. and I think it was 79 days, something like that.
Mm.
And like he posted pictures on top of Pyramid Peak, and oof, like talk about brutal.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. I set a goal to climb all 58 14ers in one calendar year. So, which is like really, it's an interesting task. We're going to see how it goes.
Yeah.
And like based on like math and like just like logic, there's going to, like, as soon as it gets to 14er season, which is like end of June, July, I have to climb 3 to 4 a week.
Mm-hmm.
Which
you might become a runner. You could come down those faster if you ran down them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like I was moving pretty quick down this one.
Yeah.
So I did my first one, Quandary Peak, but I mean there was snow. Definitely wasn't running down it. But that, so I've hiked, I forget the number. I've hiked like 8 or 10 or 12 14ers already, but I'm redoing all of them. And I've always hiked them in boots and sort of heavy pack, right? Like heavy relative, right? Like, bringing sort of all the things up with me. Mm-hmm. Whereas what I'm going for now is very different. I went out and got a set of trail runners, Gore-Tex lined trail runners, so they're waterproof. And my goal is move on these mountains. It's just,
yeah,
right? Like it's not to rush them, but it's get up them and get down them. And get the mileage covered. And so, yeah, I might be running. I might be doing some trail running, especially on like the easier ones. So anyway, we had the opportunity to do, so I was going to do Mount Bierstadt the week prior to that. And as it got closer, so weather's a big factor, as you know, right? And the weather was, it was like 100-mile-an-hour gusts. It was like hurricane force winds. When I looked up at the report, it said damaging winds.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I've never seen that before. And so we called that. We're like, no way. That's not going to happen. I'm not even getting my ass out of bed that early for 100-mile-an-hour winds.
Can I tell a really quick funny Bierstadt story?
Oh, please.
So I think actually Bierstadt in the winter was my first 14er.
Ever.
Yeah, because I tried longs twice, once in the winter and once not winter, but I got, that could be a side story. But Bierstadt was winter time, so the gate was closed, so you can't start at the trailhead. And we drove up there and we're sleeping in my buddy's van the night before. But as we get up there, I was like, oh, I forgot my trekking poles. And then I was like, oh, I forgot my running shoes. So I had a pair of just old beat up Nikes that I'd just like wear around town. They were my like everyday shoes, and that's all I had. Yeah. And we were like sat there the night before, and he's like, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, we're up here. I'm not gonna we might as well just try. And it's all snow, post-holing. We should have had snowshoes or skis ultimately. Especially for the descent, would have made it so much easier. But yeah, we were like, I was like, let's just do it. And so I laugh that I hiked my first 14er in the winter in a pair of like old Nikes.
And did you summit?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
And I didn't wear any sunscreen. So that was a really good idea.
And you tan really easily.
And I do once I have a baseline. I'm Eastern European, okay?
Oh, okay.
But to start, when it's in winter and you haven't seen sunshine in a while and it's reflecting off the snow into your face, because I had my baseball cap on, and the next day I was so sunburned that I was like swole. Like, those guys who are swole, like it looks like you could like put a pin in them and they just like pop. That's what my
Yeah.
face looked like. It was
Oh,
like
that's
swollen
brutal.
from sunburn.
That's brutal.
It's the worst one I've
These
ever had.
these mountains are not like they are a very quick reminder that you are not in control, and
Mhm.
Mother Nature always wins. Whether you think you won or not, Mother Nature always wins.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You just survived that moment. Right? The mountain will always come out ahead. You
Yeah.
cannot beat it. So
No Bierstadt, and then
so my first adventure is sort of similar to yours. As we plan Quandary, and we end up going up Quandary Peak, and like the night before, it was great. Like it worked out so perfect. I was like, all right, I'm gonna be in bed by like 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, because 2 a.m. wake up call, and I'm like, I got this, and I was in bed by 8, right? So like that's a win.
yeah.
Right, like that is a huge win, right? Like planning for 6:37 and being in bed by 8, I was like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
And like a solid good night's sleep before 2 a.m. rolls around, I was like, yeah. Because normally, like when I did Long's Peak, I took an hour nap. I literally was in bed at 10. My alarm went off at like 11:30.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were at the trailhead at 1.
Yeah.
And then 15 miles and 5,500 feet of gain. And that was brutal. So I was like, yeah, all right, let's get some sleep. So I got some sleep. I had everything packed the night before. And when I woke up, I took my jacket, my gloves, and I put it on my bed. And I was like, yep, right here. Put it right on my bed. I was like, I'm putting it right here where I won't forget it. And I grab everything, and I walk out the door, and I load up my truck, and we get in the car, and we get in the truck, and we roll up to the mountain. And, we left it. We were right on time. Like 2:30, we were out the door. Get to the trailhead. We get to the trailhead at like 4:45.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, awesome. Like, we're making awesome time. I go to get my boots on. I open the back door, grab my boots, and I'm like looking, and I'm like, I see my pack. Where's my jacket? And my oh, fuck. I didn't bring my jacket or gloves. So I look at my buddy Ganesh, and I'm like, guess what? I don't have jacket or gloves. And so, anytime you're above 14,000 feet or going to above tree line, like you have to deal with wind.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't that I was worried about like being cold per se, right? Because I had enough layers to not be cold, but I didn't have a single layer to break the wind.
Mm.
And that is where I would have been screwed.
You didn't bring a rain shell?
No, because there was no chance of rain.
Yeah, but
I know.
Come on, it's Colorado. You always bring a rain shell.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I didn't. I like specifically in our text message, I was like, should I bring a rain shell, guys? And they're like, no, not for tomorrow. And like, so we all left our rain shells out.
Oh.
And so, yeah, if I would have the rain shell, like I would have at least had something.
If any, like that's actually something I never, I have like a windbreaker rain shell that's super lightweight. I take it even if there's no like signs of rain because you just don't know. Mm-hmm. And then it's a type of warmth that is super lightweight.
Yes, because it's essentially sealed.
Yeah.
It's like a plastic bag. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so lesson learned. Always bring a rain shell. So Ganesh is like my buddy Ganesh who hiked with me. He's like, oh, let me see what I have. And he like pulls out, he has his winter jacket in his pack. He has what he's wearing. He has his like windbreaker on. Mm-hmm. But then he has his like winter puffy and winter gloves. Yeah. And he's like, you can wear this. And I was like, all right, let's try it. Like, he's like, I didn't bring a headlamp. And I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, why didn't you bring a headlamp? And he's like, oh, I thought we would have been at the trailhead. We got to the trailhead really early. I thought we were going to be at the trailhead. There was going to be light. I was like, Ganesh, I go for a walk at noon in the park and I bring a headlamp. Like, you always bring a headlamp. What do you mean?
You always bring a rain shell?
Right. So now the rain shells go into that. But what's funny is I didn't have a headlamp on my last hunt, my last elk hunt. And so Jeff was giving me a hard time. So I didn't have a headlamp. So it's not just that. We just love giving each other shit.
Yeah.
So I was like, you're fucking going to survive without a headlamp. He's like, oh, I didn't bring food either. And like, I know there's a bigger story about him and not bringing food.
Yeah.
And like, I had an idea that he was going to need food. And so I packed more than enough food for the both of us.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good. So we start hiking and I'm wearing a winter coat and winter gloves and we're in the trees.
Yeah.
And I start overheating quick. And I'm like, oh, this is not going to be good.
Yeah.
So like, I'm like trying to like shed, but like you can't shed too much because then you're going to freeze. Right. Because I essentially have nothing, right? Like it's still cold. So like, I'm trying to find this balance of like not moving too fast, not moving too slow, right? Like how far open, how much, right? Like, so whatever. We end up hiking and we're like, we're going to try it and see how it goes. And, yeah, we'll see what happens. And thankfully we ended up summiting, but I felt bad for him because he now had only like running gloves.
Mm.
And because I had his winter gloves. And so once we and what was crazy is once we were like headed towards the peak, the winter gloves, my hands were still freezing in the winter gloves. So I couldn't imagine how his hands felt.
Yeah.
And the jacket did a really good job. And his jacket, he said he was good. And I had extra layers to give him to put under if his body was cold. So like that wasn't that big of an issue. And we did without the headlamp. But then, like you don't realize until you're at altitude like that, like what oxygen deprivation does to you. And you think like it's not a big deal. And there's people, right, that are climbing Everest and all these peaks and like they're just like partying at 17,000 feet. But when you're not used to it, when you're hanging out at 5,000 feet all the time or at sea level all the time and you get to 13, 14,000 feet, it's fucking nuts. And I'm like, you feel like, maybe you can describe your feeling, but like I was at this point where like I just couldn't take enough in. And you're just like trying to like catch your breath, and it never happens.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to one point where we were on like the final stretch, and it was like straight up. And I turned around to look. Ganesh was a little ways back, and I turned around to see where he was. And as I turned around to look, like everything just started going black. And I was like, oh shit. And I like turned back around real quick and like everything got real dizzy. And like at this point, we're probably above 14,000 feet. And I was like, well, I'm not looking back anymore. And I just kept walking. But I was like, oh shit, like I almost passed the fuck out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that wouldn't have been good. But yeah, then made it up to the top. And the wind was blowing, it was cold. It was not fun. It was probably one of the worst 14ers I've ever done. And they say Quandary Peak's like easy, but it was not easy. Yeah. It was not fun.
Yeah.
I got to this one point on it where I even took a picture so like during this journey of hiking all these, like I'm really going to write a book after it. And I want to have like all the documentation and all like the images. And I got to this one point where like sort of like a false peak. It really wasn't because you could see the mountain, but like you get to this point where you like come up and then you see the end of it and it's just straight up. And that was like, my mind was like, fuck that, turn around. Like I do not want to go up that. Have you done Quandary?
I'm thinking I have now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
You get to that one point. You get to that one point and then you just look up and you're like, that's way steeper than anything we've been on this entire hike. And I know the top's right there, but that's going to be a bitch.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think I did it in the snow too, actually. Yeah. Or in a whiteout. Now I'm like, what? I did a 14er with someone, but I don't want to say this as a to rein on the excitement of your challenges, because I think they're an incredible challenge. But I like off the beaten path things, and I think because of how popular 14ers got, for me, the appeal of being out there with like, and this is different, like this season you're doing it right now, but the draw to like bag all the 14ers wasn't there, because I know so many of the times it'd just be with like so many people that I was like, it just was never like a high priority on my adventure list, but
for sure,
I would do them at random time. Like I did, I think it was Quandary, now that you're saying it, which is funny. I don't know. I'll have to try to look it up and send you a photo, but it was like at one point it was like super crazy windy. And I'm remembering this fall summit, and I know a lot of them have fall summits, but like, it was just like whipping. And then there was like, we got socked in with the clouds, and yeah. Yeah, I think that might have been it. Is there another one near there?
There's a lot like in that area.
Okay.
Because that's near Breckenridge.
Okay.
So you literally have to go through Breckenridge, and then if you went further south, you have all like the collegiates, and if you head into like Fairplay and all that, you get all the like Massive and Elbert. So there's a bunch down that way.
Cool.
But yeah, so it is like, it's funny when I started telling people I was going to do it, people were like, just do the 13ers.
Yeah.
That's every mountain above 13. Like, first off, there's like 400 13ers.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and some of them are like class 4, a lot of them are like class 4, class 5, where there's only 5 or 6 class 4s on the 14ers. And so, right, like it's also not as appealing, right? But like, that's the thing is like Bierstadt, Bierstadt was my first one, but I did it in the summer, not like a lunatic, and in boots, but it's like a party. Like, there were people in flip-flops going up this thing. You get to the top, and there's like hundreds of people up there. It is not a place that you go to get away from people. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And even Quandary, like we started really early. So like people are taking advantage that it's winter and they're starting later. Yeah. We started like, we almost had like a summer start. And because I was afraid of the snow softening up too much, and like post-holing or avalanche concern. And, but on the way down, it was just like a line of people coming up. Yeah. And I was like, wow, like even in the winter, this attracts a lot of people. Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely that downside of having a lot of people. But
I didn't want to like, there are going to be ones though that are like, again, they are off the beaten path and they're really hard to get to and things like that. So it's like, saying that, I was like, I don't want to be a jerk when I say this, but it was just my own. It was never like, I gotta do these 14er. Like, they would happen naturally when they would. But I didn't like seek them out as much, because I'm like, dude, I'm out here to get away from everybody. That's why I live where I live.
Right. But one of the things that like I'm trying to add some like pizzazz to this, like if it's not already enough. So I have a few things that I want to do. I want to hike 2 mountains in one day where I catch the sunrise on top of one and the sunset on top of another. Yeah. Right. So like logistically, you have to have 2 mountains that are somewhat close together. Right. You don't want them, because there are some mountains that you do in the same hike. Yeah. Right. And that won't work, because like you typically, unless your weather's just freaking amazing, you typically don't want to be above tree line during like the afternoon time. Yeah. Right. So the goal there is, one, have a perfect weather day where you go up one, catch the sunrise, get down it, go relax, rest, have a decent day, get to the base of the other mountain by, whatever time you need to be, 5, 6 o'clock so that you're on top of it for sunset at 9.
Mm-hmm.
All right, but then you have to hike down. It has to be
Mm-hmm.
easy enough or be able to trail find because you have to hike down in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to do that. I'm starting to like figure out the logistics on this now. I'm going to do Long's Peak,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to teach a yoga class on top of Long's Peak.
Nice.
And I'm going to market it as the largest yoga class ever on top of Long's Peak. So Yoga Junction, right? Michael's
Yeah.
business, Yoga Junction, is supporting it.
Oh,
So we're going
nice.
to do marketing with that. Yeah. So what I'm hoping, I talked with the owners of G1. Hopefully, we're going to get Yoga Junction and G1 to do a collaboration of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Right, where like everyone wins, right? Like, and sort of like on flyers and social media posts, it's G1 and Yoga Junction's names to say, hey, like we're gonna have this yoga class on top of Long's Peak.
Yeah.
But then I thought, right, because I sit on the board of Animal Assisted Therapy Programs of Colorado,
Yeah.
and what I'm probably going to do is do fundraising for it. Mm-hmm. So where it's $10 or whatever you want to donate to join in this yoga class on top of the peak.
Yeah.
And then just all proceeds we'll just donate to Animal Assisted Therapy Programs of Colorado.
Yeah.
So I'm really hoping that so now I'll have these 3 businesses in on it who are supporting and marketing, and right, and just it's good for everyone in their business. And then it also you get to be a part of that. You get to be a part of the class that and I had a friend go, well, isn't this the first class on top of Long's Peak too? And I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know. I can't necessarily say that, but I was like, it's definitely going to be the largest, because I'm just going to if you're on top of Long's Peak on that morning, I'm going to be like, come do yoga.
Yeah.
And it's not like I need to lead them through a warm up or anything, right? It'll be like a 20-minute class, right?
Yeah.
We'll do some warriors and we'll just have some fun. And so I'm just trying to think of fun ways to also make this fun and also marketable.
Yeah. So. Nice.
Yeah, Quandary was a bitch. We were going to do Bierstadt
Quandary was a quandary?
Yeah.
Is that the right use of that word?
I think so. We were going to do Bierstadt tomorrow, but they're getting a ton of snow, and they're going to have 40-mile-an-hour winds tomorrow. So it's just
yeah,
I'm good.
Yeah. It's funny. When I messaged you, Bierstadt's a great one to do in the winter, and then you keep just having bad weather windows for it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And even right now, right, I'm looking out the window, and I was out earlier today. I left at 5:30 this morning, and it seemed okay outside. Mm-hmm. When I came out of the gym, it was fucking raining, and then I went to the lifting gym, and I come out of the lifting gym, and it's snowing, and I'm like, oh, stop.
Yeah.
Right? And so, but you can't, right? That's all part of the journey.
Yeah.
You gotta, and eventually, I'm okay with it now because it's still early and it's whatever, but there's going to be mountains where it's raining. Yep. Mm-hmm. Get your ass up the mountain. I don't give a fuck if it's raining, right? It's windy. Get your ass up the mountain. Doesn't matter. Right. So
with
thankfully I have some room
safe,
to play with. Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's not.
Yeah. 100%. You still don't go up at 100-mile-an-hour winds, right?
Yeah.
Right. 100. We were coming down Bross years ago. We did Mount Bross, and coming down Bross, I think there was 50 or 60-mile-an-hour gusts. And literally we got knocked over. No joke. Walking down the mountain, a gust came and pushed us over and literally fell over. So
yeah.
You absolutely have to be safe on these mountains, and there's risk involved in everything, but
yeah,
when the things that you can avoid, when you start getting into these kind of crazy gusts and damaging winds, you have to take those things seriously.
Yeah. I've actually never been to the top of Longs because my 2 attempts, one was in winter, and then we got into a total whiteout, and couldn't navigate direction. And so we were going for a while, and we're like, well, we were trying to like look at the map, engage, and we didn't have the blue dot on our phone to tell us. We were just using regular maps, and then we were tracking on like our spot check,
which can be hard because those maps aren't great on spot.
The spot check wasn't a map. It wasn't. Now Spot, I think, has a two-way communication. I have a Garmin InReach Mini that has like two-way communication, and I know the bigger Garmins you can have the map, but the Spot we has was just for sending out emergency, or you can do like your own tracking. So we then looked at it afterwards, like looked at our tracks afterwards, but we were trying to navigate from the map and what the like topo was, and then in the whiteout it just got very disorienting, and so we were kind of going, we're like, man, a storm was starting to come into with that whiteout, and we're like, we just have to follow our tracks back. Like the only option we have at this point is to follow our snowshoe tracks back. And then probably 100 yards from the tree line, it started unleashing like lightning, and it's literally like we're like running to tree line, and then in tree line it was like lighting up purple. Like that's insane, wild. And then when we got back and we looked at our tracks, we almost had crossed. We almost made a lollipop, and we were like close to like actually hitting our tracks out.
Oh my gosh.
And who knows if they would have been covered by, like it's all those things of like, they could have been covered by snow at that point. Like, but it was just crazy to see, like, we were had gotten turned at one point, and because it was like an eggshell, like you couldn't see more than 10 feet in front of you. Like that's nuts. It's crazy. So that was
like, you have to take that seriously.
Yeah.
People that don't go up the mountains, they don't understand like the risk involved, because one, the weather changes very quickly.
Yeah.
And it is like the minute you don't have landmarks, especially like on a Long's Peak, right? Like there are very specific landmarks that you are working towards that are very obvious, right? Like Boulder Field, got it.
Yeah.
Keyhole, got it. Right? Like, oh, there's the top of the trough. Like, you don't see shit. Like it changes everything. And even with maps, like in digital maps, like it's still you're gambling, and thankfully you turned around when you did, because you don't know, like those snowshoe tracks, like had that storm rolled in, those snowshoe tracks were probably going to be gone.
Yeah.
Right. So now, like trying to get back down, like it's a risk every time you're up on a mountain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially that high.
The second attempt, I got really bad altitude sickness. We had gone out Friday right after work, and I didn't eat enough that day, and it was cool because it was the evening. It was probably our plan was to hike to the Boulder Field, camp at the Boulder Field, and then wake up early and go up, because we wanted to like skip the crowds essentially, and kind of have like a head start, right? And so we go like straight from work. We start hiking probably around like 6 p.m. and we're just like hauling because it's cool out, right? It's cooler in the evening, and there's no one around. We're just trucking along. We stopped maybe once, and I took a sip of water and like ate half a bar or something, and then we just like kept on going. And it got dark, it got windy. We're at like starting to make our way to where we're going to camp in the Boulder Field, and it's just like like my hands are freezing. We're starting to get like disoriented because of how fast we went without like gaining that elevation, not fueled properly, not hydrated properly. And we get there, and it's my boyfriend at the time, and I've never seen him. He would like almost like whimpered. His hands were so cold. I was like, you get your hands warm. like he like made this whimper. I don't even know how to describe it, but it was kind of this like thing clicked in me as like he needs to take care of himself. So I like turned on. I was like, you do what you gotta do. I'll like get things set up, and we like get everything set up. He's like back to life. We get inside the tent. He's cooking, and then it all hits me at that point, and I just like was like not feeling well. I ate and then laid down. I was like, oh no. And I like got out and I puked everything that I ate. But when we got in there, we noticed like I barely drank any water and I was like, it was just poor nutrition and poor hydration. And the thing about altitude, it's not just what you're doing while you're there. It's like, what was the day like? What was the day before like? That is all supporting you. And I know that it was that like I barely ate that day before doing that, and then like moving quickly and not stopping and all the things. And so we made the call that since I didn't hold any food down that night, that it didn't make sense for us to in the morning try to then summit.
You have the hardest part of the hike ahead of you. Like there's no way.
Yeah. Well, and I woke up. We woke up early before, and I felt totally fine. But we also didn't want to gamble with like, you feel fine now, you've acclimated, whatever, but you also have no fuel in your system, and you don't even know if you've 100%. Caught up in water. Like even though you drank a lot, doesn't mean it's all being absorbed.
100%.
And so we sat and we watched the string of headlamps. So that was like the interesting. It was just a line of lights coming up towards the boulder field. And I think that was also a moment that like stuck with me of like, there's so many people here. Like I like the way we were doing it because we were like going to have, I'm sure there still would have been people, but it would have been a
head start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the people aspect in some of those makes it riskier because someone does something stupid, or like in those narrow parts where it's not up to you. There's other people that you have to manage.
Right. A Bierstadt, a quandary in the summer, right? Like there's absolutely like risk involved. It's much less risk. But when you get to like a Longs Peak, which is a class 3, and right, like you get to the trough, there's fucking rocks coming down at you.
Yeah.
And like bouncing, like big fucking rocks. And you just hear them coming. And it's like, don't, like just, and you see them rolling and right, like you are now dealing with other elements that you've never had to deal with on a bigger on like a big mountain like that. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Like the more people and like you see when we were coming down we summited at 7:47. I know because I was just looking at pictures. We summited at 7:47. Right, we left the trail at 1. On the way down the trough, which is like this. It's funny when I describe it, I say it's the hardest hike I've ever done. Is the trough just this 900-yard section of a 15-mile hike.
Yeah.
It was so intense. And just like rocks are falling down and people, it's now what, like 9-10 o'clock? You're supposed to be off at the summit by noon. Right? You're supposed to be below tree line by noon, really. And there's people still making their way up the trough. And like clouds are getting dark, clouds are rolling in, and you're just like, what the fuck? Like when you hear like, oh, people die from lightning strikes, you're like, now you understand why. And people are coming down, pushing rocks down, people are coming up, rocks are falling down. It was wild. The people aspect is definitely a danger. If you want to give it a go, the 3rd time, world's largest yoga class at August. So we're trying August 5th, I think. So I think that's the date I'm gonna go with. I gotta have a meeting with G1 and see if they're in for the marketing. And based on my schedule, I think August 5th is gonna be a good date. And I'm trying to get Bree to come up because she's actually had a few attempts at Longs Peak and hasn't made it either.
Yeah.
and she's willing to drag her camera up the mountain. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, so we can make it a hunter hippie thing
Yeah.
if you want, right? Like if you're in for it, you let me know. But yeah.
Yeah, we'll see after how I feel after I run 100 miles, and I might be just
Right.
sitting on a paddleboard all summer after that.
Yeah, I would not judge you for that.
Just hanging out, soaking up the sun.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there'll be plenty of sun on Long Peak.
Yeah.
Maybe. Maybe.
I am. I think some people are more sensitive to altitude than others, and I know I am. When I did Machu Picchu in 2006 or 2005, it might have been. Yeah. Summer in 2005, we didn't do the Inca Trail. We did like another one off the beaten path because we didn't book it in advance. So we got into Cusco and found a travel place that was like, one of the little stands, and we're like, okay, let's do this one. And then we go back to our hostel, and the guy who runs it, we told him which one we're doing, and he's like, ooh, tough. And we're like, what? And then we open the guidebook, and it's like the most grueling of all hikes to Machu Picchu. And we're like, oh, okay, cool. So it was like a 5-day.
And you had altitude issues there?
Yeah, so we went over a 15,000 foot pass. And that was, yeah, I could feel it just that day. I mean, going up over it, I could feel it. And then on the way down, I was like, I felt sick. Like I didn't want to eat lunch where we stopped for lunch. I just felt sick. And then by the evening and the next day, it was fine. But it was just, I mean, and I was coming from sea level. I was living in California at that time. So it's not like I even trained. Like I came off of college water polo season. I wasn't hiking. I wasn't training. No. I wasn't in that kind of shape, and we're just like, yeah, let's go. Sure. So, that's funny. And I got altitude sickness there on the hike, but I was fine in Aguas Calientes and in Machu Picchu. Cusco is actually higher than that. So a lot of people, our buddy who flew in before us, he had altitude sickness his first day in Cusco because he was surfing I think he was surfing in Lima or somewhere. He was at sea level, flew into Cusco, and he like couldn't sit up for a day, and then he was good to go. But yeah, I think I don't know, probably has helped now living in places that are even just being at 5,000, you definitely have a benefit over sea level.
I know people that come to 5,000, right? Like come to Denver and get sick, right? Like have headaches the whole time they're here, right? Like coming from like sea level or close to sea level, and altitude can mess with you, especially again, it goes back to hydration and diet. It can be a problem for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I went to Flagstaff on my way to Arizona last year, and I went to run in Flags, I think above 7,000. I was like, gosh, like, I was running above 8,000 for part of the time. And I was like, man, it's crazy how just those couple thousand extra feet, Cody was at 5,000, the hills are at 5,000. So it's like, I've been living since I left Colorado at places equivalent to that, but then going to Flag and being 7,000, 8,000, I was like, dang, I get why people come here to train.
Yeah. And the opposite's true, right? In that sense, right? That you come here. When I go, like I was in Milwaukee and doing jiu-jitsu, so Milwaukee is essentially sea level, right? Like it was great. Like I was just going, and I'm like, my freaking battery life is infinite. I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And so it's great training here, but like then you get back here and you're like, why does my cardio suck? Or doing whatever you do, right? And it's just normal. But then you go to sea level or close to, like when I go to Phoenix and train, like it's great. It's like, yeah, I feel like Superman. This is freaking awesome.
Yeah. I
So there's
heard
definitely a
something
benefit.
though about that they say it's actually best to train at elevation and then sleep at lower because
Hmm.
it helps facilitates recovery, better recovery,
Hmm.
which is
Interesting.
yeah.
Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why hyperbarics are like making like a really big impact, and why you're seeing a lot more use of like hyperbarics, because essentially it's simulating. It's helping you get more oxygen
Yeah.
in those hyperbaric chambers, right? While you rest and recover.
Yeah. And I think it will I don't want to say anything about this because I have been like reading and researching a lot about um what it actually my doctor, Andrew Huberman, he has a breath and it's not that you're getting more oxygen, it's actually um why you struggle with breathing at higher altitude is the difference of pressure. Um, so the thinness of the air it's not the amount of oxygen, but it's
Mm-hmm.
the pressure difference between your lungs and
Mm.
the outside. And so
Hmm.
it takes more effort to breathe because of that pressure imbalance or of some sort.
Hmm.
So I think that's an interesting um,
Yeah.
because we've always referred to it as like lack of oxygen.
Right.
Um, and
When you say that, I don't.
yeah,
Okay.
no, and I've literally just heard the only reason I know, like, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't even know it 100% to say it
Mm-hmm.
accurately, but because I've also in James Nestor's book, Breath, there's a lot of misconceptions about um, oxygen absorption, like the
Mm-hmm.
amount of oxygen because people want to breathe through. I'm doing this nose breathing program that I'm fine tuning it for endurance athletes and training people how
Mm-hmm.
to nose breathe in endurance uh, sports. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of why people resort to mouth breathing is because they feel like they're suffocate. They can't get enough air, and
Mm-hmm.
there's
Yeah.
not actually a difference in the oxygen absorption whether you breathe through the mouth. The volume changes.
Yeah.
Um, so just something,
Interesting.
yeah, it's
It
fat.
makes
It's
me think of. It makes me think, and I don't know anything about this, so like I'm just talking just off of what I think.
mm-hmm,
When you like, if you have like a bag of chips
mm-hmm,
and you go on a plane and you go up in the air, and the bag of chips, right? Like you go to like open it before you open it, the bag of chips is like,
mm-hmm,
like the pressure inside of it is just, it's all built up and it's just huge,
mm-hmm,
right? So I'm imagining, right, that's what's going on in your lungs. Right? Like there's just pressure built up inside of it, and I'm sure it has to affect whatever. Right? Again,
mm-hmm.
much smarter people than me,
Yeah.
but that's all I can think of is like these bag of chips, like big old freaking thing, and you like open it, and it's just like, right, like it just all you let you let all the air out. There's like 3 chips in there.
Yeah, it's something like the pressure, the denseness of, I think, the air outside
Mm-hmm.
facilitates an easier um, movement of, yeah, I wish I'll have to get back on the next episode or we
Next
can link
episode.
in the listen to his breathing podcast that is just him. So because he's interviewed someone about the breath, to just if you're curious about more of that and just the breath and breathing in general and the mechanics and the chemistry and all of that. But um, yeah, because there's less external pressure, I think it makes you work harder for the movement of
Mm,
it's not like sucking air in naturally, right? Because
yeah.
we don't
Yep.
have to work very right now if you're just breathing and you don't have to work very hard for the air to come in and out.
Mm-hmm.
right? But then think about all the muscles that if you did conscious breathing, that you work to like expand the belly to give room for the diaphragm to expand, the intercostal muscles to expand, and then just by releasing that effort, the diaphragm rises, air flows out, because there's the pressure, I think, in and out is more, I don't know, maybe there's more, I don't know. I don't want to say it wrong, but then as the air gets thinner, you actually have to put more effort in those muscles to breathe, which uses more energy. And so you have to work to bring the air in. It doesn't just naturally flow in because of the contrasting pressure inside and out of the body. So
interesting. Well, we'll link that. We'll link the doctor's episode.
My doctor.
And that's a great segue to
breathing.
You leading us through breath.
All right.
That was perfect. Almost like you did that on purpose.
I didn't actually. And then while I was saying, I was like, oh, maybe this is time. It is time to breathe because you've already been breathing.
Let's do it.
All right. As always, you can close your eyes. You can leave your eyes open. And just inspired by what we were talking about starting to consciously breathe. It's already happening naturally. And so often we aren't really getting that full movement and expansion with the mechanics of our breath. And you might hear people say, breathe into the belly, and you're not actually breathing into the belly, but you're allowing the belly to expand so the diaphragm has room to move down. So take a deep inhale and allow the belly to expand. And then pause. And then breathe in again, filling in the chest. And then pause. And then fill in the gap if there's any more room to breathe in. And then as you exhale, take a slow, steady stream as you breathe out. One continuous movement of breath out. And again, inhale, expand the belly. Pause. Continue to breathe in as you expand the ribs and chest. And then fill in the gap. And then a slow, steady breath as you exhale. And one more time, breathing in to the belly and the chest. Pause and then sip up any more air. And then exhale completely, emptying it all out and allowing yourself to relax fully. And then taking a few natural breaths. Before you slowly open your eyes or allow your attention to come back to the external surroundings.
Thanks, Bree. As always. Grab your journals. What did we even talk about today? We talked about all sorts of things. Lots of sweaty seat cushions.
Oh gosh.
So
this will be harder for a episode title. It's gonna have to be 49ers, 14ers, not how's your crotch?
Crotchy, what'd you say? What was your business name?
Crotchy, cleanly crotches. Cleanly crotch.
Yeah, that's the name of the episode. Anyway, write in your journal, maybe about just the breath that we just did, or if you have thoughts on climbing mountains, or you have questions about climbing mountains, if you've never climbed a mountain, or if you have, like, write it down. And then if you want to reach out to us, reach out to us. We're always happy to answer questions about anything that we talk about. Remember, we're just sharing from our experiences on our journey. It's not that we're right or wrong. It's just the life that we've lived. So just write in your journal about whatever thoughts come up, about whatever it is that we've talked about today. And make sure you're using that journal in more than just listening to our episodes. Right? Like, write something in it daily. It doesn't have to be a whole lot. Just get your thoughts down on paper. Over time, you'll see how beneficial it is and how helpful it is. And with that, it's been great talking with you, Brie.
Great talking to you.
Alrighty. Enjoy your day.
You too. Go smell your pants.
See ya.
Bye.